On a misty ridge in West Java, a stepped hill rises above the forest like something built, not grown. For some, Gunung Padang is only an archaeological site. For others, it is a buried memory of a far older world. So what is it really? The place sits about 2 hours from Jakarta, where volcanic slopes, rice fields, and jungle make the landscape feel alive with layers of time. That setting matters because in Indonesia, stone monuments can hide in plain sight for centuries. Gunung Padang was long known locally as a sacred hill, but modern attention came when researchers began asking whether the visible terraces were only the surface of something much larger. The question changed everything. Natural hill, ancient sanctuary, or both? Supporters of the deeper theory point to the site's layered construction, where stone blocks appear arranged in distinct terraces. If those layers were intentionally built across different periods, the hill could represent a long and complicated human effort. That is where the mystery begins to widen, because the visible monument is only part of the story. Beneath the surface, some investigators reported buried structures, suggesting a depth of engineering that would push the site far beyond a simple hill shrine. The strongest fascination comes from scale. If the deepest layers are truly man-made, then Gunung Padang would not just be a local monument, it could belong to a lost chapter of construction history in Southeast Asia. For believers, the site feels like a surviving fragment of a forgotten civilization, one that understood stone, slope, and alignment in ways later generations barely remembered. They see intention everywhere, in the terraces, the placement, and the sheer patience of the work. The idea gained momentum when surveys and drilling reports were discussed publicly, and the conversation moved from folklore into geology, archaeology, and chronology. Suddenly, a hill once treated as local heritage became a global mystery. One compelling detail is the layering itself: visible terraces above, deeper materials below, and a sense that the site may have been modified more than once. That kind of repetition invites a bigger question: who kept returning here? And why? Another detail is the stonework. The blocks are rough, yet their arrangement suggests deliberate choice rather than random collapse. And that tension between simplicity and intention keeps the site hard to dismiss. Then there is the setting on a hilltop, where visibility across the surrounding landscape would have mattered. Sites placed high above the valley often carry ceremonial meaning, but they can also signal control, planning, and a view of the sky. That sky connection is part of why the story resonates so strongly with people drawn to ancient mysteries. If a civilization built upward toward the heavens, was it simply for ritual, or did the monument encode something more? Researchers who favored an older timeline argued that the site might predate the familiar rise of complex societies in the region. If true, that would force a rethink of how early people organized labor, belief, and engineering in this part of the world. That is the heart of the appeal. Not just a strange hill, but the possibility of a lost technical tradition hidden inside it. A monument can be rebuilt in imagination long before it is fully understood in science. Yet the site also sits inside a wider Indonesian landscape full of volcanic rock and natural formations. And that matters because geology can imitate design. Some of the most persuasive mysteries begin with a real pattern and end with a hard debate over what made it. Skeptics question whether the deepest claims outrun the evidence, especially when unusual shapes can be read as architecture from a distance. They point out that excavation, dating, and interpretation must all hold together before a lost civilization can be named. Even so, the public fascination never really faded because the site touches a familiar human hope. That history is larger than the textbooks. If the ground at Gunung Padang contains older layers than expected, what else might still be waiting beneath other hills? The most compelling claims rest on the possibility of a deliberately shaped core beneath the visible terraces, something hidden for thousands of years. A buried structure would explain why the hill feels less like a single monument and more like a sequence of intentions. That image is powerful because it suggests continuity across time, one generation building on another, preserving a sacred form while changing its meaning. In that reading, Gunung Padang becomes not a puzzle piece, but a record of cultural memory. Still, the chronology remains contested, and that is where the story becomes more careful. Different methods and interpretations can produce very different ages, and in archaeology, age is everything. Some of the disagreement comes from how the subsurface findings were sampled and read, with critics arguing that disturbed layers can complicate the picture. When the ground has been reshaped by time, water, and human activity, certainty becomes harder to hold. But even uncertainty can be revealing because it shows how much is at stake. If the deeper layers are natural, the hill remains remarkable. If they are artificial, then a major ancient achievement may be waiting in plain sight. That is why Gunung Padang keeps drawing comparisons to other megalithic places around the world, where stone, landscape, and memory seem to converge. Across cultures, people have always built toward the sky, but not always for the same reasons. The site also carries a local sacredness that should not be lost in the global debate. Long before any headline about lost civilizations, people in the region treated the hill as a place of reverence and presence. That human layer matters, because mysteries endure not only through stones, but through stories. A place can be ancient, holy, and contested all at once, and each of those truths can survive beside the others. What remains unresolved is simple to say and difficult to settle. How much of Gunung Padang is natural hill? How much is human construction? And how old is the oldest human layer really? Those questions keep the site alive. The strongest case for something extraordinary is not a single dramatic object, but the accumulation of strange consistency, terraces, depth, placement, and the persistent sense that the hill was shaped with purpose. Taken together, they invite a second look. The strongest conventional reading is also serious. Natural geology, later human modification, and incomplete excavation can create a confusing record. In a place like this, the ground itself can blur the line between discovery and interpretation, and yet the mystery survives because neither side fully closes the case. The site still asks whether ancient people in this region possessed more ambition, more organization, or more forgotten knowledge than we usually allow them. That question is bigger than one monument. It touches the possibility that history is full of advanced local traditions that vanished before they could be properly remembered, leaving only stones and arguments behind. Gunung Padang endures because it sits exactly where wonder and method meet. The wonder says something hidden is there. The method says the answer must be earned, layer by layer, from the earth itself. For now, the hill remains what it has always been, a place of stone, memory, and argument. And until the deepest layers are understood beyond dispute, the question will keep rising with the mist. What exactly was built here?